Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Bookbind with me, phoenixrokni, author of The Fall of Magic, Book 1 of the themasterscore series. Today, we're going to be talking about Armatay, the enigmatic sage of Avestan. Now, every world has its warriors, rulers, and even villains. But in The Fall of Magic, there are also voices that stand apart, voices that whisper across ages, carrying wisdom older than kingdoms. Now, one of those voices belongs to Armatay, the Sage of Avestan. So let's talk about who the Sage is. The Sage of Avestan isn't a conqueror, a monarch, a soldier. Instead, he's a guide, a keeper of truths that are buried beneath centuries of encroaching darkness. To meet the Sage is to come face to face with knowledge that unsettles as much as it enlightens. Now, unlike other powers moving across the face of Auro in Book 1, the Sage serves no throne, bows to no crown. But when we learn about him, we come to understand he is an advisor, and that seems counterintuitive to his purpose. But as we further come to learn more about him and who he is, we understand that he serves the gods. And it is for that reason why he remains there nearby in Valanthraeus. Understanding that Valanthraeus is the place, the central focal point where the gods walked among the people. It's where they left the people. And it is where they left the Auron elves to inherit a throne to serve as stewards over all people across the world. Something interesting is that his loyalty is only to the gods and to aid their children. And it's very specific because as we meet him and we travel with him and we see that how he interacts with everyone, we start to realize that he carries a sense of mystery, wisdom, and ancient authority. He's very reverent, a very reverent type of character, and he's ultimately someone whose secret will shatter what Volier, our MC, believes he knows about his parents' death. And that's very, very pivotal in not only catalyzing some of the change that is coming, but also as you come to see the interaction, that the meeting between those two in Avestan, when Kairos guides Volier there was a moment, an important moment, where Volier, I'm not going to say that he disregarded, but he avoided a certain level of responsibility. And it is immediately after that moment, I mean, we're talking hours, when a very traumatic event happens that pushes him beyond where he is, what he thinks he has to do, and it very much catalyzes a sense of justice that he has avoided for a very long time. And when I created Armatay, I wanted a character who could stand both as like a mentor and also as a mysterious focal point that sort of hinted at something bigger. And he is someone who reveals just enough to help, but never enough to really explain what's happening behind the scenes at a divine level. Even when we realize later that he has a very strong tie to the divine. In many ways, the Sage was inspired by archetypes like the Wandering Hermit, although I would say probably a little bit more like Gandalf from the Lord of the Rings, but not the same. He's got a bit more of like the prophet tied into the oracle, but I'd say probably more the prophet, especially since he brings a prophecy. But he has a very distinct divine purpose, and his words shape choices. And once his absence is felt, it does usher in hope, even when magic's potency is lost. And I mean that it ushers in hope, not just because of his absence, but by what he leaves behind for both Kairos and for our main character to hold on to as a guide for what's to come. And there is a future, and it must be safeguarded in spite of what is about to happen. Now, in the story, Armatay enters the tell at a time when Volier will be in desperate need of guidance. And yet he also is very avoidant of accepting anything of the sort. What the Sage offers isn't just clarity, it's a challenge. and his council pushes Volier and others to seek what's coming differently, and to ask questions that they're not ready to answer, and to take steps that will change them and the world forever. Armatay knows more about the origins of the Dark Master than anyone alive really does. And there's a reason. And it hints at the truths that many souls across Auro tend to want to hide from. It is a dark history, and history such as the period of the War of Strife and Sorrow, when the dragons are all but decimated, mostly, probably. Anyway, my point is that Armatay sort of exemplifies this element of knowledge that the Dark Master is taking more from the world than the people realize. And I thought that was very important for what not only this story catalyzes as the first chapter in the series, but also setting the stage for where we really go in the light of Hope in Book 2. Now, similar to Inari and the Sage serves as both a mirror and a teacher, he seeks answers and reminds the elves and humans of their inheritance from the divine, about the things such as the noble tenets. His support to the group along the way really ushers in another mentor, one of fire and also born of divinity, the first Avenat Ionair. With Drasias, the sage is a mystery, a problem to be solved and nullified. And there is a history between them, which I say that delicately. There is a history between them, an unspoken recognition that suggests their paths have long been in conflict with one another. And that's kind of impossible because they've never met. Ultimately, though, Armatay attempts to appeal to Drasias and fails. And as such, Armatay leaves gifting our heroes something very important, a great gift that helps our heroes have a chance of success. He sort of balances the playing field, and he has been duty bound to this for a very long time. Now, the sage never reveals his true age, nor the extent of his power, or why he is larger than a human while appearing as one. There are hints, though. One in particular is when Volier meets him in Avestan for the first time, and just as he's approaching and before he appears, he is preceded by light. And that was a subtle nod at who he really was, what he really was as one of the Auros, which are the beings of light who serve the masters in guiding the fate of the planet. And here's a tease. The sage's role in the fall of magic hints at forces at play. His true purpose was to guide fate, and he was there under the strict guidance of the master whom he serves. Which master, and how that ties into the larger narrative of the series, will be understood in due time, when the past and the future of Auro finally collide. In closing, the Sage of Avestan embodies one of the greatest truths of the series. Wisdom is not about having the right answers, but it's about being willing to make great sacrifices in the face of overwhelming odds. He does so in faith and in the sacred divinity which he has been created by, steering him to help those pivotal to the future conflict that is inevitable. It was his final lesson for Aratos and his friends before they continued along to face Drasias and the Sinister Army. So, what do you think? Does the sage know more than he revealed? Did Kairos, whom he entrusted the prophecy with, know more about the prophecy than he let on when talking to Valathos? And did Armatay know more than he let on when sharing the prophecy with both Volier and Kairos? And what secrets do you believe Armatay may have kept to himself in his final moments on Auro? In the next episode of Behind the Bookbind, I think it's time we just get this out of the way and talk about Angor and Siam. With that conversation is something very important. I don't want to spoil anything. I'm going to walk a fine line in not doing so. But I think I need to explain myself and ask for a little faith in why this happened. Anyway, I'd like to encourage all of you to join our community Discord, slowly but surely growing with all people that are as passionate about Auro as perhaps I am. And with that, I wish you All the best. Take care. May the light guide you, and I'll see you soon.